Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most alarming issues facing the Middle East, a crisis that has been unfolding quietly yet dangerously for decades. Iran's water crisis isn't just a natural disaster. It's a man-made catastrophe driven by mismanagement, political decisions, environmental negligence, and years of hidden truths. What's happening beneath the surface is far worse than what most people know. And today we're going to expose the reality the world was never meant to see. Iran was once known for its ancient water management systems, a country with ingenious engineering like qanats that sustained civilizations for thousands of years. But in the past few decades, something changed drastically. Rapid industrial growth, political pressure to appear self-sufficient, and careless agricultural expansion pushed the country far beyond its ecological limits. Iran's water demand grew, but the natural supply did not. Rivers dried up, groundwater levels collapsed, and what was once a balanced system turned into a ticking time bomb. One of the biggest hidden factors behind this crisis is overpumping of groundwater. In many regions, wells are drilled illegally, and farmers are forced to rely on underground reserves just to survive. But the government hasn't always been transparent about the scale of this problem. Reports show that aquifers that took thousands of years to form have been drained in just a few decades. This isn't just a shortage, it's a collapse of the country's water foundation. Once an aquifer is gone, it's nearly impossible to restore, and Iran is running out of time. Another shocking truth is how Iran's dam building projects made things worse. For years, building dams was seen as a symbol of progress, a sign of technological strength. But many of these dams were constructed without proper environmental studies. Instead of solving water shortages, they disrupted natural ecosystems, diverted rivers, and caused entire lakes to shrink or disappear. Lake Urmia, once the largest saltwater lake in the Middle East, has nearly dried up, leaving behind toxic salt fields that are carried by the wind into nearby towns, destroying farms and harming people's health. Urban areas are facing their own battles. Cities like Isfahan and Shiraz, known for their history and culture, now struggle with water cuts, rationing, and declining water quality. In some regions, taps run dry for days. Residents rely on water trucks, bottled water, or local sources that are barely safe for consumption. Yet officials often downplay the severity. While people worry about their children's drinking water, many still don't know that contamination levels in parts of the country have risen due to aging infrastructure and shrinking supplies. Climate change has thrown another blow at an already fragile system. Iran is located in a region vulnerable to rising temperatures, declining rainfall, and longer heat waves. But what makes the crisis worse is how little preparation was done. Instead of adapting farming practices, reducing water, intensive crops, or shifting industries, policies continued as if nothing had changed. The consequences are now impossible to ignore. The country is losing fertile lands, rivers have turned to dry beds, and dust storms have increased dramatically due to dried lakes and barren soil. One of the most concerning parts of this crisis is how it affects ordinary people, especially farmers. In rural Iran, agriculture is a way of life passed down through generations. But today, many farmers are abandoning their land because the wells that once sustained them have turned into hollow pits. Entire villages have been emptied because residents can no longer find enough water to survive. These climate migrants often move to already crowded cities, adding pressure to weak infrastructure and creating new social challenges. But the biggest question remains: why has the government allowed this crisis to reach such a dangerous point? The truth lies in decades of political priorities that favored short-term gains over long-term survival. Water-intensive crops like wheat, sugar beets, and pistachios were heavily promoted to show agricultural independence. Instead of investing in modern irrigation, billions were poured into outdated systems that waste enormous amounts of water. Corruption and poor planning made matters worse, with contracts handed out to companies that didn't care about environmental sustainability. Another hidden layer of the crisis is tied to internal politics. Speaking openly about water mismanagement has at times been discouraged. Environmental activists and researchers have faced pressure, restrictions, or arrests simply for raising concerns. This lack of transparency has created a dangerous silence, preventing necessary reforms and delaying urgent action. Many scientists inside Iran have warned for years that the country is moving toward irreversible water collapse, but their warnings were ignored until the effects became impossible to hide. As lakes dry up, deserts expand, and rivers shrink, Iran is experiencing land subsidence on a massive scale. This means the ground literally sinks because the underground water that held it up has disappeared. In some areas, the land is sinking faster than major cities like Mexico City or Jakarta. Buildings crack, roads deform, and infrastructure becomes unstable. Authorities rarely discuss the true extent of this crisis publicly, yet the damage beneath the ground could threaten entire regions in the near future. In addition to environmental consequences, the water crisis has caused growing unrest. Protests have erupted in several provinces where residents demanded clean water, stable access, and government accountability. These protests show how deeply water is tied to social stability. When people cannot drink, farm, or live normally, frustration eventually boils over. Iran's water crisis isn't just an environmental disaster. It's a socio-political crisis with far-reaching implications for the country's future. Despite the severity, solutions do exist, but they require honesty, transparency, and bold action. Iran needs to reform its agricultural system, shift away from outdated irrigation methods, and reduce water-intensive crops. It must invest in modern technology, restore damaged ecosystems, and regulate groundwater extraction with real enforcement. But none of this can happen without acknowledging the truth. The country is running out of water, and unless immediate steps are taken, the consequences will be catastrophic. International cooperation could play a role as well. Many countries with similar climates, like Israel, Australia, and parts of the U.S., have advanced water recycling programs, desalination plants, and efficient farming systems. If Iran were open to adopting these methods on a national scale, it could drastically reduce water waste and save millions of lives from future shortages. But to do so, the political barriers must be lowered, and the leadership must prioritize survival over symbolism. For Iranian citizens, the crisis is deeply personal. Water is more than a resource, it's life. Families are seeing their lands turn into dust, their wells collapse, and their futures disappear. Yet their resilience continues to shine. Many local communities have created their own conservation initiatives relying on sustainable farming, restoring qanats, or forming volunteer groups to educate neighbors. These grassroots efforts show what the government has failed to provide: a vision for survival. One of the most heartbreaking consequences of this crisis is what it means for Iran's younger generation. Millions of children are growing up in regions where water scarcity is normal. They witness their parents struggle with shortages, their schools shut down due to lack of water, and their communities slowly vanish. Their future depends on decisions being made today. If nothing changes, the next generation may inherit a country that can no longer support its own population. The environmental impact stretches beyond Iran's borders. Dust storms created by dried lakes and abandoned farms are traveling into neighboring countries, causing health problems and damaging crops. Rivers that once supplied water to shared regions are now too depleted to continue their natural flow. Iran's crisis is becoming a regional threat, and the world cannot ignore it any longer. The final truth behind Iran's water crisis is simple but painful. This disaster didn't have to happen. It was the result of decisions, secrecy, and neglect. The warnings were clear, the science was available, and the solutions were known. But political pride, corruption, and misinformation pushed the country toward a point of no return. Now, millions of lives are at risk, and the only way forward is through truth and action. As we expose the reality behind Iran's water crisis, it's important to remember that acknowledging the problem is the first step towards solving it. Transparency, accountability, and scientific leadership must take priority over politics and propaganda. The future of Iran depends on whether its leaders and the world are willing to confront the truth that has been hidden for too long. If Iran can shift its policies, embrace sustainable solutions, support environmental activists instead of silencing them, and invest in ecological recovery, it still has a chance to save its land, its people, and its future. But if change does not come soon, the consequences will be irreversible, and the crisis we see today will be only the beginning. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more in-depth explanations about global issues, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us uncover the stories that matter most. Stay informed, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next video.